All right, let's get right into it. We're going to look at a piece of journalism that was so strange it made everybody stop and pay attention. It's from a correspondent reporting from the front lines of a global crisis, but the reporter's identity? It's something else.
So we've all seen our fair share of headlines about climate change, right? But back in 2025, a bunch of articles started popping up in newspapers all over the world, from South Korea, the Czech Republic, even Brazil. And they had a byline that was just totally different. The dispatches themselves were pretty chilling. And listen to this. These weren't just, dry reports. They read like desperate pleas. They were these first-hand accounts of a silent struggle. And they had this sense of impending doom that felt incredibly real, incredibly personal. So, who could this grim correspondent possibly be? I mean, who has that kind of perspective? Who can actually feel the ground getting ready to give way? It wasn't a scientist or an activist or some journalist holed up in a hotel room. Nope, it was a tree. Yeah, you heard me right. A tree. The author of these powerful articles, whether it was the Korean Baekom tree, a fir tree in the Czech Republic, or a Jussara palm in Brazil, was the forest itself. And this wasn't some kind of poetry or metaphor. These were actual articles generated with AI from living trees telling their stories in our newspapers. For the very first time in, forever. Okay, I know exactly what you're thinking. How on earth is that even possible? And look, it's not magic. It's this absolutely fascinating mix of nature and some seriously next-level technology. So let's pull back the curtain and break down how they actually gave a tree a voice. It all starts by basically giving the tree a central nervous system. First, the team goes in and puts these advanced trackers on the trees to sense what's going on, all this biological and environmental data. Then they collect all that amazing info. We're talking sap flow, how much moisture is in the leaves, the temperature of the soil, even the air quality. All of that gets crunched by an algorithm that can analyze it and cross-reference it with global weather patterns. But here's the magic step, the final piece of the puzzle. A really sophisticated AI language model steps in to translate all that complex science into a story that you and I can actually understand. But here's the thing. This project wasn't just about translating data. That's the easy part. The real goal was to translate a feeling, to turn these cold, sterile facts into a story, an emotional narrative that people could actually connect with on a human level. And this slide shows you exactly what I mean. On the one hand, you've got the raw data. It might say something like, soil moisture decreased by 13% compared to early spring. Okay, a fact, but it's pretty easy for our brains to just skim right past that. But then the AI takes that and translates it into this. My roots are growing thirsty. Wow. Suddenly it's not a statistic anymore, is it? It's a cry for help. And this wasn't just any old AI either. To get this right, they trained it on huge libraries of literature, philosophy, and science to give it this really rich, deep ability to tell stories. This let the AI craft a unique personality for every single tree, one that reflected its own history, its local environment, and how it was feeling right now. So, a healthy, stable tree might speak with a really calm, elegant tone. But a tree that's stressed out from a drought, its voice becomes urgent, desperate. Each tree wasn't just a data point anymore. It became a unique character, a storyteller, and honestly, the most reliable environmental expert you could ever hope to find. So, this whole thing is an incredible feat of technology and creativity, right? But it does make you wonder, who was behind all this? And what were they trying to achieve? Well, the campaign, called the Tree Correspondent, was actually created by Hyundai. And this wasn't just some random one-off marketing stunt. It was really the next big step and a commitment they'd had for over a decade. They already had this project called the Ionic Forest, where they'd planted almost 1 million trees all over the world. So this was the logical next move, and this quote really captures their mission perfectly. The goal, they said, was not just to plant a forest, but to give the forest itself a voice. See, after a decade of action of planting trees, it was time for communication. It was time to let the very forest they helped build
finally speak for itself.
And this wasn't just some clever campaign that got a few likes on social media. No, this became a global phenomenon. It ended up earning the highest awards you can get in the creative world, which really proves just how powerful and impactful it was on a massive scale.
Just look at this. At the 2025 Cannes Lions, which is basically the Oscars for advertising and creativity, the Tree Correspondent campaign Clean Up. It took home 2 gold lions, a silver lion, and got shortlisted in 5 other categories. Now, to put that in perspective, there were over 25,000 entries from 90 countries that year. So yeah, this was a huge, huge deal.
So why did it win all these awards? The judges' comments really say it all. They praised the campaign for using AI not as some kind of gimmick, but as a genuine tool to forge a new connection between people and nature. By literally turning the tree into its own media channel, it took abstract, kind of boring climate data and turned it into a story that was deeply emotional and just impossible to look away from.
You know, when you take a step back and really think about what this campaign did, it represents a pretty monumental shift in how we relate to the natural world.
Think about it. For all of human history, for millennia, we've been the only ones telling nature's story. We were the narrators. We described it, we studied it, we interpreted it for our own purposes. The trees, the oceans, the mountains, they've always just been silent characters in a story that was told exclusively by us.
But with this project, something fundamentally changed. For the first time, really, the subject became the narrator. After literally eons of silence, nature finally found a way to translate its own experience into our language. So, the trees have started talking, and that leaves all of us with just one simple question. Are you ready to listen?